On this episode of Through the Trauma podcast, I had the awesome opportunity to sit down with someone who I believe is a stem cell treatment specialist. She definitely has her own personal experience with stem cells, as well as the research behind it and education when it comes to stem cell therapy. She is talking all about LifeWave patches, which are stem cell patches. I was excited to learn all about these patches, but I will be honest with you, I was slightly skeptical. They seem almost too good to be true. I wanted to try them out for myself. I definitely don't want to bring any information to this podcast that is not 100% aligned in what I believe truly works. And I wanted to give you an honest opinion of my experience using the patches. I got the patches. I got the X39, X49. That's two different patches. I used them together and I used them for a month. I will say that after about 3 days on the patches, I felt an improvement in the way that I felt. I was on them a month and I become really skeptical during that time of, do I really feel these patches? So I decided to come off of them for the next month to see how I felt. I will say that after about 3 or 4 days of being off the patches, I felt a difference, to the point that I did not realize how great I had felt during the month until I come back off of them, and the nagging feeling of, this is how I felt before I got on the patches. So with that being said, I just want to tell you to listen to this episode with an open mind, because I have truly been blown away by the research and all of the actual functionalities of these patches and how they actually work. And feeling the difference of my own personal experience, I can honestly attest to them. I think they have the potential to help so many people in so many different areas. And if I had one thing to tell you, I would say try them. You have nothing to lose. They do have a money back guarantee, but I would say try them. If you're interested, then please reach out to me. I can put you in contact with Darlene. I truly believe, research them for yourself. I will give you all of the resources in the show notes of everything you should research, but definitely don't dismiss them because they are remarkable. Welcome to Through the Trauma podcast. My name is Amber Larkins, published photographer, storytelling expert, visual artist, entrepreneur, speaker, and coach. This podcast was born from one question: how do I get inspiring stories of triumph out to the people who need to hear them the most? Come with me, enter my world where lives are getting changed, heroes are getting developed, and greatness is being achieved. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Through the Trauma podcast. I am Amber Larkins, your host, and today I have with me a very special guest, Miss Darlene Green. And Darlene's passion is helping people activate their stem cells by elevating their GHKCU, and she will explain to us what that is, repairing their DNA, reversing their aging, and getting out of pain through the latest photobiomodulation technology. Now, that is a mouthful, but Darlene, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Amber. It's great to be with you today.
Darlene and I met. She started sharing some of these amazing technology that she has found and kind of stumbled upon. I was like, you have to come on and share with my audience some of this because this is kind of groundbreaking. So, Darlene, why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Is there anything you'd like to add?
It's been a very interesting career path for me, as well as life for me. Your Through the Trauma podcast is so powerful, and I'm grateful to you for all that you do for everyone in the world, Amber. My story starts really far back. I entered the Navy right out of college. I had a very idyllic childhood. I'm one of those people that, had a great high school, great family. Everything was just really lovely. And I did not choose well in my first marriage or my second marriage. The first one was, scary. When emotional abuse turned to physical abuse, I had to really get out, or I was afraid I might not survive it, and really kind of gave everything up everything. I walked away with nothing, and actually took on debt that I didn't even know about. He had spent all of our savings and then taken out a credit card and spent a bunch of money, and I don't even know what he spent it on. And so I never shared any of the problems that we were having in our marriage until I walked out the door. And so everyone in my whole family was just sort of stunned. And I think I knew deep in my heart that they didn't really like him. And so I was just not willing to confirm that they were right. So that was a really a tough kind of gut wrenching thing to go through. I actually, the divorce wasn't so bad. What was really bad is that I found out he was sleeping with my best friend too, right? Like, and that was what was the most painful part of it, was that my very dear friend, who I had shared everything with, who had actually seen blood and scars and the remnants of abuse. I could not even believe that she would be dating him. So I lost kind of, losing him wasn't a big deal, but losing her was really heart wrenching. So got through that, and I was like, okay, I'm terrible at choosing men. I'm going to be much more careful the second time around. But narcissists are shockingly charming. They have credentials and successes that really belie the evil in their soul. Like they are really convincing. So husband number two was a really believable liar. And I think at the time I was still young enough where I didn't understand the power of the animal brain, how smart it is, how you allow your prefrontal cortex to overrule that animal brain and the hair standing on the back of your neck. And if I would have learned anything earlier in life, that would be the one thing, is to trust those instincts so much more than I ever did. Leaving the man wasn't hard, but I had two daughters at this point with the second marriage. And that was brutal because he was a retired Navy SEAL. He had forced sex on me before we walked out the door. It was one of the last straws that broke the camel's back, but also he had very, very poor boundaries with my daughters. And so there was a huge court battle for years. And I mean, 10 years. It was incredibly bank breaking. I had to take out loans. It was, and by the end of 10 years, I had spent $750,000, Amber. It was everything I had and then some. And the money was problematic, but the court occasions caused me to really have PTSD. A lot of things caused me to have PTSD. Not being able to take care of and protect my daughters, having to have them over for custody visitations, being in the courtroom and having lawyers spew lies felt like a shotgun blast to the chest. It was really horrible. And then having a judge just say, well, yes, it's felony bad judgment, but so I came out of that with post-traumatic stress disorder, which surprised me. Really naive about PTSD. I thought it was the thing that the warriors got when they were in battles. It never occurred to me that I could have PTSD. I hadn't gone to war. I was trying to protect my children. I was trying to get through this divorce. But so it stunned me when someone said, you have PTSD. And I had been in therapy, extensive therapy for years. So I think from the moment that we separated, I got the girls into children's therapy and we started therapy, and we learned we had like co-parenting therapy. I think in some cases I had therapy twice a week. So I'm not a stranger to therapy. I'm not a stranger to all the stress management techniques that anybody has ever used. I love, love, love EMDR. I know you've had guests in your show talk about EMDR and how powerful it is. It was really powerful for me. It was like a year of talk therapy in a day. So I loved EMDR, and I did all the things, and I learned all the things. But I had transitioned to my final Navy tour. I was a commanding officer of the Navy Operational Support Center in Phoenix, Arizona, and I had 1,200 Navy and Marine Corps reservists working for me. And our mission was really to prepare those reservists to be able to deploy anywhere in the world. We oversaw their training units, their medical unit, dental, administrative, combat engineering, all of that. They would literally pack up their bags and leave and go overseas for a year or two, and then be gone, and then come back. And the problem was I would sit with them before they would leave. They usually the member and their spouse, and I would sit with them when they returned, the member and their spouse. and they weren't doing very well. And I knew they weren't doing very well. And I noticed that they weren't doing well. And I'm not entirely even sure I would have noticed that they weren't doing well, except that I knew my own experience. I don't know if I would have seen it. You know, certainly warriors try to hide all of that. They're not just telling you their story, pouring it out. They want to appear tough. But, you know, I think when you come from a place of pain and grit and resilience, you can see it in others. You can see the pain in others. And so I was able to see it, and I recognized the trauma, and I realized that we were not doing a very good job of taking care of our of our reservists or their families. They left as an individual, they came back as an individual. So they thought that their experiences were very unique, which was very problematic. And so I stood in front of, I don't know, like 400 or 500 of my reservists one weekend, and I said, I'd like to build a program to better take care of you and your spouses and your loved ones upon return. I don't have any idea what that needs to look like, but I think you do. And I would love for you to help me build this program. And so we did. And it took a year. This was a very new thing the Navy was doing to deploy as individuals. Every program was centered around units. Well, this was part of the problem, is there was no unit for the family and there was no unit for the individuals. So we built this program, and we had great keynote speakers talking about everything around critical reintegration and how we've been doing this since Greek and Trojan years. It was amazing. There was a book called The Code of the Warrior, and that author came and spoke to us. And we had small trained facilitators doing small group discussions, one of which was why I want to go back. So imagine you're the spouse, your military member comes back from being gone a year or more, and one of the first things they say the first week they're home is, I need to go back. I want to go back. And they're like desperately wanting to go back. And you are mad. You know, you're mad because you're like, are you kidding me? You've left me with the kids, the jobs, every single thing. I've done all this by myself, and you've been gone, and you want to go back? And what about me? And so it took getting them all around a table in a small group and talking about this, and realizing every one of them wanted to go back, for the spouses to say, okay, this is not about me at all. There is something bigger than me going on here that I don't understand, and being able to talk through why and what that meant, and everything from the adrenaline addiction to, you know, the PTSD that they were experiencing, and then making sure that they understood the resources. We actually had therapists on site doing EMDR. We had all sorts of supportive members. I was very nervous because I knew I had 120 people in this returning warrior weekend, that any one of them could melt down at any moment. And but we did metrics before, during, and after, and there was 100% feedback. And I had these salty Navy chiefs coming up to me afterwards, hugging me and saying, "You saved my marriage," or in some cases they would write to me and say, "You saved my life." So it was really beautiful and very intrinsically rewarding, and the silver lining of my pain, I think, in large part. And today, 17 years later, this program is still in existence. I started it with my organization. I spread it through the Southwest region, and then I retired from the Navy, and it went on to be something throughout the nation. They actually called me back on active duty a year later and had me help the Marine Corps stand up their own program like it, and explain why we did things the way we did. And anyway, so that was my Navy career, and a little bit of my start. But as I left that marriage, I was never ever going to get married again. Never, never, never. Right? My second marriage was depleting and exhausting, and I knew that I had no I just didn't trust my own judgment in men at all. But the angels intervened, and along the way, I met my current husband. He was a Navy captain at the time, a naval aviator, and truly the sweetest man on the planet. Just a heart of gold. It was the first time in my life where I really listened to my animal brain, which was the dark skies part, and the sun comes shining down, and all you feel is joy, and you laugh, and you're happy, and you're giggly, and how lovely is this? And he was, you know, he was a little overweight. He had a really big bald spot. He didn't dress really nice. He didn't drive a really cool car. He was just like, you know, not anything that my prefrontal cortex would have said, this is the man for you. Like, it wasn't like that at all. It was just how I felt around him was so happy. We didn't actually date for a long time. We did group things because I wasn't dating. Over many years of continued therapy in the NTR, I came to a point in time where I was like, wow, I would actually be really lucky if he married me, because he is a catch beyond catches. So it was probably several years ago that I noticed something was really wrong. And it's interesting how subtle it can be initially. It starts with something as simple as, did he drink more than I thought he did? Because he doesn't remember anything about the conversation we had last night. Or, how come he doesn't remember which remote to use to find the TV show we watch every single night? He's been the tech geek in the family forever. So those kinds of early little warning symptoms were just like, I really truly initially thought maybe he's got a hidden drinking problem I don't know about. Like, what is going on with this memory? And ultimately, I asked him and said, I feel like you're struggling a little bit with your memory. Do you feel that way too? And he said, I do. And he said, but there's really nothing we can do about it. And I said, well, no, what if you have a brain tumor? Who knows what's going on for you? You're young. I think he was, 64, maybe, at the time. And I was like, well, we need to get it checked out. So that in and of itself took some time to figure out what the diagnosis was, because Alzheimer's is not something that is easily diagnosed, and you go through a lot of specialists. We also discovered that he has mold, and I had mold. So anybody who knows anything about mold, it can present like dementia. So there are a lot of people misdiagnosed with Alzheimer's that actually, I won't say just have mold, because it's a horrible thing, and it can make you feel like you have PTSD, and it can make you, have like allergy symptoms or dementia symptoms or all sorts of immune systems. But it is like treatable, right? It's not like Alzheimer's, where there's, the latest drug for for Alzheimer's causes brain bleeds in 50% of the people that have my husband's APOE4/4 type. So that's just not even an option. So we did finally, though, get the diagnosis. He has both mold and early Alzheimer's. They finally did a spinal tap. And that was, I didn't really deal with it, Amber. I mean, I dealt with it in that I researched, I studied, I learned, I went looking for what can we do. I kind of attacked it like a problem, like a military officer would, right? We're going to go tackle this hill. We're going to fix this. We're going to figure it out. But, and that meant, okay, everything I read led to stem cells. And so we went to Mexico to get stem cells 4 times in a year. Both of us. I was trying to treat, I had several, I think the byproduct of my very difficult marriages and PTSD were several autoimmune disorders, from fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome to POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia, where I'd stand up and just like black out and pass out. And I had hit my head twice, and then actually was kind of grounded. And they said, for 2 weeks, you're not driving or going anywhere till we figure out what this is. And ultimately they said, you have really low blood pressure, and it doesn't get it fast enough up to your brain. And so you're going to have to take this medicine where we increase your blood pressure. Anyway, so we tried the Mexico stem cells 4 times in a year at $10,000 a piece. So that was a lot. In fact, I think that year we spent like $140,000 in medical, and I was trying everything and nothing was really working. It didn't make a dent, and his decline was continuing. We tried hyperbaric chamber like 3 times a week for a month. And we did blood ozone spinning therapy. We bought an ozone machine. We do infrared sauna. I can't even begin to tell you how we changed the diet. We followed Dr. Bredeson's protocol, and anybody in your audience who has Alzheimer's, I strongly recommend Dr. Bredeson's book. And he's even got a book called The First Survivors of Alzheimer's, where they're written by the people who had Alzheimer's and then came out of it, because he says there are 36 holes in the roof, and you need to patch all of them. And so one of those holes would be mold, and one of them would be insulin resistance. And in 70 to 80% of the cases, it's mold and insulin resistance are 2 of the holes. But there are other holes, immune disorder, immune viruses or other things, Lyme's disease or other things that you can go patch. And once you patch all the 36 holes, you can start to reverse the symptoms. So he offers a lot of hope. But he also, there's a pretty strict protocol, no sugar, no white flour, no wheat flour, only very top of the line oils like coconut or extra virgin olive oil or avocado oils, and certainly only grass fed, grass finished meats, and very organic everything. And we completely changed everything. And, certainly alcohol was removed, soda was removed, all of those things for years. And still, it wasn't really making a dent. We were exercising 6 times a week. He had a trainer 3 times a week to make sure that it was really the right kind of training for his brain, high intensity training. But again, the decline continued. So I was at a place where I was really losing hope. And then sort of something really terrible happened. I tripped down the last 3 steps of our staircase and I missed the last 3 steps. I was texting on my phone. Don't do that. Don't text and walk downstairs at the same time. It's so dumb. And I missed the last 3 steps, and I landed really hard, and I broke my foot, and I snapped one ligament entirely, and I snapped the other ligament, and I was in so much pain, and I lost all of the coping mechanisms that I had as a care provider. So my exercise program, my pickleball, my walks around the neighborhood, my social interactions, I just kind of, all of a sudden I'm in the house sitting in a chair asking my husband, can you get me a water? And he's looking at me with the deer in the headlights look going, I don't even know what you're saying, and I don't know how to do that. And that's when I kind of fell into full-blown depression. So I wanted to cry every single day. So, and I recognized the symptoms of depression. I'm like, okay, this is not good. I'm going to need some help getting through this. And so I reached out, and I did get a therapist. But about that time, it was March, somebody said, a friend of mine who knew that I had gone to get stem cells said, you need to try this patch, this little tiny quarter size patch made by LifeWave called X39 has changed my family's life. And she's got a story that is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. And I was like, you had me at stem cells. Yes, whatever. She's like, well, this elevates a copper peptide in your own body to activate your own stem cells. And did you know that when you're 30, half of your stem cells are dormant, and when you're 60, they're almost all dormant? And I said, I did not know that. So we began wearing those patches, and it was so remarkable in the first week. So we had gotten to a place where Jim was really a shell of his former self. He was no longer engaging in conversation. He was sort of sleeping the whole day away, 3.5 hours a day. And then falling asleep at 7 o'clock at night. And I think conversations were just too hard for him. So if he did engage, he was maybe 3 conversations behind. And he certainly asked me the same questions, like 7 times in 3 minutes, which is very hard, very hard as a care provider, no matter who you are, to be patient and act like it's the first time you've heard that question and when it's the 7th. But I think what really broke my heart is that he was no longer trying to be funny. And that is core to who he is. This is his personality. And so when he wasn't even trying to be funny, there was a part of time earlier on where he would try to be funny, but not quite land it. He would like use the wrong word or not quite get the finished punchline in, but we knew he was trying to be funny, and we knew he was joking with us, and we would all laugh anyway. But in this case, he was just like withdrawn. And I really felt like I had lost him. And so this is where we were when we began the patches. I was depressed. He was not himself. And that first week was sort of miraculous because, one, he didn't even nap at all. Not at all. Like, he didn't take the 3.5 hour nap. He still doesn't take this he doesn't nap. He was so chatty. Amber, it was sort of like a dam broke, and he had 2 years worth of stuff to say. Like, and it just kind of came out, and it didn't just like come out in word salad. It came out like appropriately, and he made sense, and he was replying quickly, and he didn't ask me the same questions over and over again, which all of these things just made me so happy because he was my husband again. He was warm, he was flirty, and over time additional things happened for him. He at the 5-month mark regained his sense of smell, which he'd lost 15 years ago. And that's an early warning indicator actually for Alzheimer's, if you're not connected with like a virus like COVID or something like that. So he has blood pressure dropped 37 points. He regained the ability to whistle, drum to the beat, all sorts of really good things happen. And I want to make sure I say, he's not cured. So I'm hopeful, but we have to sort of clarify that LifeWave products are not intended to cure, treat, diagnose, or prevent any disease, even if they do. But in this case, he's not there yet. I'm hopeful with time that the activity of those stem cells can continue to do repair work.
You obviously know stem cells. You guys went to stem cell therapy before you ever even started the patches. But for my audience that is not familiar with stem cells, I know that you mentioned that they're dormant at a certain age and then they become even more dormant as we age. Can you explain to us a little bit about stem cells in general for my audience that
Sure.
doesn't know?
Great question, Amber. So stem cells can be anything. So they're what made you. When your first two cells came together, your stem cells were the things that decided, okay, this is going to be a limb, this is going to be your brain, this is going to be your foot, your heart, all of those things. So your stem cells have this innate wisdom to become whatever they need to be. They have all sorts of amazing effects. They reduce inflammation. They trigger the death of old cells. They self-replicate, but they can differentiate into any kind of tissue, from bone tissue to muscle tissue to cartilage to whatever the body needs. And they're wise enough to go and start working on areas of inflammation or whatever the body needs. So we might say, oh gosh, I want all of you going up right to my husband's brain, right? But the stem cells may say, oh, but Darlene, Jim was a Navy captain and a sailor for 30 years, and we need to start with his liver. I have no idea. But so you can't really tell them where they need to go. You just have to sort of wait for them to do their thing over time. But when we were going out of country, we were getting somebody else's stem cells. We were getting placenta stem cells, which is very controversial. They were, I hope, properly sourced, right? But you don't really know. You don't know if they're alive when they come in. They're supposed to be alive, and they're supposed to be fresh within 24 hours, and all of this. But it's not like I could see where they came from or the plant, right? So you hope that they are, but we could have just been paying $20,000 for nothing. Who knows? But it also could have been one of the things that I've learned since about stem cells is that inflammation. I don't know that eats up stem cells is the right approach, because that sounds like it's literally kind of like a Pac-Man eating them up. But I think it like inactivates them or deactivates them, or it keeps them from doing their job. So it could be that we were getting good stem cells, but we were so highly inflamed from mold and other kinds of sources of inflammation that the inflammation just ate them up and made them not work for us. And the difference this time is that we've been working to reduce our inflammation with one of the patches called Eon while we activate our copper peptide and increase our stem cells.
Very, very interesting science behind stem cells in general. And I personally don't know a lot about stem cells. So that's why I did want you to explain that a little better as far as what that is. How long have you been on these patches?
Well, it's only been 9 months, and the company LifeWave has been around 20 years. The X39 patch, which is specifically the patch that I'm talking about, that elevates your copper peptide and then activates the copper peptide, then activates those stem cells. That's been around 4 years. And I'm frustrated that I didn't know about it then. In spite of all my research and all of my Googling and everything that I did to look it up, it was not available or easily visible. To your point, it was by chance that I learned about these. And I'm a bit salty about that, because I can't imagine where we would be if 2 or 3 years ago we would have started these patches, where Jim would be today. And certainly even where I would be today. His hair, which was gray and had this big bald spot I had since I known him, right? Since I met him, that bald spot is closing in. His hair is growing back chestnut brown, which he's never had chestnut brown hair. Like, I've only known him with blonde or gray hair. So I was like, when have you ever had chestnut brown hair? And he said, well, as a kid, I did. I had this amazing experience. There's a patch called Ice Wave that is for pain. So I was 5 months in pain, and I mean throbbing foot pain that nothing touched. Percocet didn't touch it. Vicodin didn't touch it. Anything, Fiorinol. I tried everything. It was horrible, and nothing was touching my pain. I think it's part of the fibromyalgia that I have a very high sense of pain, but it was really, really bad. And I was so tired of hurting as well. And so when I first put on this LifeWave patch, that, day one, and my pain went away like that, I didn't believe it. I was like, okay, this must be the day in my 5-month journey that it just sort of stops, right? There's just no way these little patches could take pain away like that. And then if you wear them 12 hours on and then you take it off for 12 hours. And when I would take it off, I would crawl in bed, and man, 15 minutes later, my ankle would be throbbing. And I would be like, wow, it really is the patches. So I got the amazing relief from pain for the first time. I also had all this energy, like I can't even describe, not energy like an espresso and like a shooting through your vein caffeine, but energy like the Energizer Bunny, where you just keep trucking all day long and you just don't stop. And I mean, at the end of the day, I was in the kitchen cooking up on my broken foot, on my sprained ankle, in the kitchen cooking up a storm. Cooked more in that week than I'd cooked in a year. And I was like, I don't know why I hated cooking so much. And in the end, I think it was just, I just didn't have the energy. Like, it just didn't have the energy to cook at the end of the day. I would have to, because it's not easy to get all of these really healthy ingredients. You can't buy it prepackaged or prepared, really. So what, you just have to do it yourself. And I just hated doing it. So I was really enjoying that. And both of us got better sleep. And when I say better sleep, Jim, we were working on his sleep, because sleep is when the brain detoxes. And we've been working on this for years, and including putting red lights in the bathroom so that we didn't, we dim the lights at night. We take our eyes off. We have blue light glasses. We stop eating 3 hours before bed. We get our eyes on the morning light. We do all the things you can possibly. I took a class on how to get deep sleep. Like, really, we tried all the things, and he was still getting 15 minutes of deep sleep. But in the second week on the patches, he got about an hour and 25 minutes of deep sleep. And I was so elated. And my deep sleep, I think I've gotten up to 2 hours of deep sleep, which I'd never, ever gotten in my life before, since I've been recording it, which is not that long ago. We're both still continuing to work on our deep sleep, but other things improved too. Energy, my depression lifted week 2 or week 3. I remember going to see my therapist that month and saying, I'm really happy. Like, I don't really feel like I need to see you anymore. And she said, yeah, I don't really think you do either. You seem really good. And I said, yeah, I'll keep you there, because I'm sure this is a journey, right? Alzheimer's is a journey, and it's nice to have somebody there if I need her. But I was really doing well. I was able to live in a place of gratitude again, and I'm big on gratitude. I think that it helps it helps increase your baseline happiness level, right? There aren't many things that don't just go up and down, but that actually increase your baseline happiness level, and gratitude is one of them that can. So we're big on that, and that was huge. Though probably week 2 or 3, I just noticed that depression lifted, and having been through a lot of therapies over my lifetime around anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of these things, never has anything been so easy and so lovely. And, part of my passion, there are so many people hurting in the world that are depressed or anxious or feeling like there's no light. And there is light. I think of the military veterans and the suicide rate, and they've donated so much and sacrificed so much. Their minds is a bridge too far. Like, their bodies, anything that we can do to help any of them and anybody else who's in pain, I think it makes it worth talking about my story. Because I will tell you, Amber, I'm not the person who talks on a podcast. Like, I was the person who posted when one daughter graduated from the Naval Academy, I posted. And then when another daughter graduated from the Air Force Academy, I posted on Facebook. Like, not Instagram, not TikTok. Like, I don't even have TikTok. None of these things. Like, I just was a very private person. I would never have ever considered even talking about my autoimmune disorders. And then I had this stuff happen, and I'm like, everyone needs to know about this. Everyone needs to know about this. My rosacea that I had a forehead covered in red and acne that dermatologists could not fix. They had tried, and nothing they did worked. Every cream, including high-end creams that I could put on my face, just burned like fire. I had very severe eczema, 20, 30 years. As long as I can remember, I would travel with tubs of the Cetaphil cream, and I would lather up my whole body. Within I think it took 3 months for my rosacea to clear and for me to really notice this amazing difference in my skin. I've had friends tell me they felt it in 2 weeks. Like, my skin's so soft. I'm like, mine's not. Like, I wasn't feeling it right when a lot of people were. But 3 months later, my skin is so soft. My pores are smaller. I had a pretty significant brown spot right here. You can barely see it now. It's like fading away. My weekly headaches stopped. My passing out just stopped. Like, I don't have to take that fludrocortisone medicine to increase my blood pressure anymore. I don't have symptoms or signs of fibromyalgia or chronic fatigue anymore. There's a patch that I love called SP6. And I don't want to get into all the patches, but I will just say this because this patch was so amazing for me. I'm someone who has struggled with sugar or salt addiction or both. I just kind of would go from one to the other, and emotional eating. I've done a pretty good job of managing it for most of my life, except when I got pregnant. I gained over 100 pounds with each child. And I had to get it off because I was in the military like immediately within 6 to 8 weeks. So I gained a ton of weight when I was pregnant. I wasn't even eating junk, but I just ate, I think, a ton of peanut butter and cheese. But I have had this issue. So I've sort of white knuckled my way through life, wanting sugar, wanting salt, and just not doing that. But it's been pure discipline. But after wearing this pouch is known to reduce sugar and hunger cravings. It has a lot of other things. It's very good for anyone with addictions, alcohol addictions, any kind of addictions. It does something in the brain. It increases serotonin and it balances things. I found that it calmed that system down and I no longer had the cravings. It made my intermittent fasting really easy. It made not having sugar. I mean, we haven't had sugar in the house for 2 years, but that didn't mean I wasn't thinking about it. And the patches made it so I'm just not thinking about it. I just don't care about the sugar, or I'm not craving the salt.
Basically, what you're saying is that you started on this journey to help your husband. You found a solution to not only help him, but then all of these other things you started seeing major results in. And I want to just add something here because anytime I just had this conversation this morning with a friend of mine in the gym, but anytime that you add in a pharmaceutical drug, you have side effects. Every single time it comes with a cost. So if you're taking something for blood pressure, it is coming at some cost to some other system in your body. This is part of the pharmaceutical, I mean, it's part of taking a drug. We know that there's a trade-off. The alternative to taking drugs is taking holistic approach to healing. Anytime we take a holistic approach to healing, we start to see side effects too. But these are usually generally because we're repairing parts of the body instead of putting a band-aid on it. One thing I do want to ask you though, Darlene, like you had mentioned earlier that you can you can't really define where you put stem cells. So like if I'm seeing an issue in my body and I'm looking to increase stem cells to repair that part or that issue of my body, how can you define, or why do we need all the different types of patches? Because it seems like they would be specific to a certain type of stem cell. Can you explain a little bit of like how can we target that?
Yeah, that's such an excellent question. And let me start by saying there are two patches that are actually elevating peptides that will increase stem cells. One is X39 and one is X49. Everyone always starts with X39 because it goes through your whole body. Where it goes and when it goes there, we don't know. They say we're at least 1 month for every decade you are old to activate and regenerate and rejuvenate all of your stem cells. 1 month for every decade you are old. So I'm 58. I would need to be wearing these at least 6 months to really go to town and activate and elevate all of those stem cells. Now, the X49 patch is also one, it elevates a daughter peptide that is specifically found in the brain, in the heart, in muscles, and it is known. I mean, I guess I haven't even said these are very well studied. There are over 90 clinical studies. There are double-blind, placebo-controlled studies, and there's a wonderful study. Remind me to go talk about the X39 heart study and the brain study. But there's an X49 study that shows that it's improved performance and energy and strength and stamina because it's supporting that cardiovascular system, the brain, the cognition, and it also provides faster recovery after exercise, which I have been able to experience, which is really helpful for me, particularly with fibromyalgia. I've always had to be very careful. It's taken me a long time to recover, and more than it should, and even because I'm aging. But to be able to go work out now and do weights and not like and be able to walk afterwards, it makes it just so much more enjoyable. I'm from dreading it to looking forward to it, and if not looking forward to it, at least being okay with it. And it also the X49 improves bone density and promotes lean mass, lean body mass. It also promotes fat loss. And one of the great things X49 does, so does X39, but is it acts as a Faraday cage. So it reduces cell phone radiation. And so those two patches are, there's actually a performance bundle. You can get them together, and they're a very powerful combination. The other patch that we talked about, the rest are not going to be talking, well, glutathione sort of activates stem cells. This isn't the same kind of level of activating and elevating stem cells like X39 and X49 do through elevating those peptides. There's a patch called Eon. And if you were to ask me what everyone needs, I would tell you everyone needs the anti-inflammation patch because inflammation is the root of so much evil, Eon. And when we reduce that inflammation, and then we add our X39, we allow that stem cell work to do good for you. This Eon patch was the number one selling patch until 4 years ago when X39 came out. And it is known to be called, it's called the happy patch. It balances and calms the brain. It elevates DHEA. It reduces inflammation and C-reactive proteins and stress. And it really balances that autonomic nervous system. Also helps with hormonal production. So really helpful patch. The other patches are each elevating a different peptide. So the glutathione patch, if you were asking me the third patch everyone needs, it's this one. Glutathione is the body's master antioxidant, right? And it is their immune booster. So when you think about the pandemic, people are getting, I was getting IVs of glutathione or taking glutathione orally to boost my autoimmune system. But since I have all these 3 autoimmune disorders is an issue when you're in the middle of the pandemic. And so I was using glutathione to help increase my immune system. And in fact, the people that live the longest in the world have the highest levels of glutathione. So if you look in the blue zones, for example. So what I found out though, was that my little IV that cost a lot of money was raising my glutathione levels 27% for 7 minutes. This patch raises it 300% for 24 hours. So the reason I think all 3 of these are so important is that all of us that had the vaccination or didn't but got COVID, if you have spike proteins, which probably almost everyone does right now, you need to get rid of them because they are so bad for your heart and your lungs and long-term negative impacts that we don't even know about yet. And these 3 patches, the Eon, the X39, and the glutathione, in 2 months, they can eliminate those spike proteins. My friend did a live blood cell study where all 6 cells had spike proteins. And in 6 weeks, she went back and did it again after being on those 3 patches, and they were all gone except 1. So really, really makes a huge difference. And so I love glutathione. There's another patch that elevates carnosine, another patch that elevates melatonin for sleeping, another one that elevates epithalamum, the aloe vita for the skin and the organs. So each patch kind of is hitting a different peptide or thing in your body that can support your body. We always start with X39 because it's the power patch. It's the most powerful patch in the arsenal. And there are people that just do that. So I don't want people thinking you have to do all of them. You don't. I mean, I did because I was desperate, and my husband, I was like ready to throw the whole kitchen sink at him. We did, but that doesn't mean you have to. A lot of people get amazing results with just X39. People with autistic children, people with leukemia, people with, you name it. There are people getting amazing results from this. And those over 90 clinical studies, you'll find there are a lot of them that are on X39. In fact, there's a brain study which really got my attention, and it's really kind of wonderful to look at this study because you can see you get to see the EEGs. So there's the EEG before they did the X39, and then there's the EEG at 3 weeks, and then the EEG at 6 weeks. And this was just X39. And what they found was that like, imagine that first circle of EEG showing red and maybe a little yellow, but mostly red. And that red is indicative of hypercoherence, which is poor communication across the two hemispheres. And it's inflammation, it's PTSD, it's anxiety, it's poor memory, it's ADHD. And then you go 3 weeks later and all these beautiful colors come in. Yellows and greens and blues are starting to penetrate in the EEG. And 6 weeks later, you've got a whole new color map. And people have been reporting, this was a 2019 SciTech study by Chevalier, double-blind placebo-controlled study. And the results said, yes, this increases GHKCU. Yes, this supports cell and nerve regeneration. It balanced the brain. It improved coherence. It improved the nervous system. It lowered anxiety. It decreased brain inflammation. It improved memory and focus and cognitive brain function. And including that, it also improved task processing and speed and ease of processing. And I got to watch that with my husband, but I got to feel that myself. I never really liked drugs. And I will tell you, back in the day at my PTSD and early in the middle of the court battles, I did everything I could do, because I didn't want my anger and my frustration and my own PTSD to fall upon my children. Like, I would lose my temper with my darling little daughters, and that was an unacceptable choice. And so there were a few years that I needed really good medicines for anti-anxiety, and I did that. But what a lovely thing to learn that you can actually do that in such a healthy, natural way without any drugs, with no contraindications, no side effects, no negative side effects. That the brain actually being inflamed and getting rid of that inflammation can actually lower your anxiety. What does this little patch do? Because people have a tendency to think that there's something inside of it that's going into your skin. It's a non-transdermal patch. There is nothing in it going into your skin. You can actually wear it on the outside of your clothing. There are a lot of autistic special needs children that are too sensitive. They just, it's the touch, they can't handle that. And so it can be on the outside of a sweatshirt or anything. And how it's working, you'll understand it when you think about it. Light therapy has been around 5,000 years. If most people know now, when you go outside in the sun, your body makes vitamin D. We all know we need to go get our little 15 minutes of sunshine to get that vitamin D, to be healthy. And similarly, we make melanin when we're in the sun. That's the body's reaction to light. So we know, and we're all sort of familiar with photobiomodulation, but this is in fact exactly what photobiomodulation is. Only if I looked at you with night vision goggles, I would see light inside of you. And that light inside of you can get reflected back. And that's what this is. It's almost like a little nano crystal structure, lattice structure inside of a hermetically sealed little patch that is like a little mirror, double-sided. Like, it doesn't even matter which direction it's facing. And it's reflecting your own light back at a very specific wavelength that is then elevating copper peptide or epithelium peptide or glutathione or whichever patch you're wearing. That is what's elevating. In fact, wearing this X39 for 6 weeks reverses the age of the cardiovascular system by 8 weeks. And there was a study in the Biofield Sciences study that did that test, double-blind placebo-controlled study. So I think that's what's really been amazing for me, is not just the brain and the calmness, but the fact that I'm not passing out anymore. That's because I think my cardiovascular system, my whole vascular system has dramatically improved. Something that they say is incurable, like POTS is not curable. There's nothing we can do for it.
I've had other people on the podcast that has talked about, doctors that will quickly just say, and nothing against doctors. I totally value doctors and medical, you can't discount the fact that we need those things sometimes. You're in the survival mode. Sometimes you have to take survival measures. And so, being on an antidepressant or whatever when you are in survival mode is not necessarily a bad thing. But we also have to know, you just know going into these things that doctors are human beings and they can base their prognosis on their own opinions or their own experiences. And some of them have vast experiences, but it is still not 100%. Like people have been misdiagnosed with things. So knowing that also going into it and knowing that there is a possibility. I had another guest on that was talking about how a doctor had swore up and down that her client had cancer and that it ended up not being cancer. So I think you're exactly right. Autoimmune is something too that we don't. I'm not going to pretend like I know all of the ins and outs of it, but I think we still are learning so much about the human body and so much about what we're capable of doing as far as healing itself. So looking into these things is hugely important, and knowing that sometimes people could diagnose you based on an experience that they've had, but possibly could be wrong.
Right. Right. I wonder now, has all of this really been mold? Because this was only the last few years that I discovered I have very high level toxic mold levels from who knows what, Navy buildings, Navy offices, my husband, Navy ships, um, or just maybe a former apartment or house or.
Surprisingly enough, with mold, actually, it's the same guest. She's a specialist in cancer, and she was telling me that she developed her own way of testing coffee beans. She found mold in Starbucks. She said Starbucks coffee is like
Oh,
one of the worst. It's surprising because we don't know where we're getting these things from. That's alarming to me.
it is. Coffee is actually very moldy. In fact, our coffee in our country would not be allowed in other countries. They have a mold threshold, like it has to be a certain mold free. Our country doesn't. So we get the dregs of all of this coffee shipments. And if it's not actually specifically saying it's sort of mold free, then it's not. But the coffee that I have to get him is mold free coffee. And that means it has to be very specific. Bulletproof makes a mold free coffee. There are a couple other companies that make a mold free coffee, but if it's not saying it's mold free, it is moldy coffee. And that is, ultimately, a lot of people can get rid of mold, process it and dump it and detox it easily until you can't. Like it could be just sort of filling up in a vase, right? And all of a sudden it gets to be too high. There's just too many toxins in there. And whether that's when you walk into a moldy office or a moldy hotel room or a building, and all of a sudden you have these symptoms, and they can be like anger or frustration or allergy symptoms or headaches or who knows.
It is alarming when you think about it, and just the amount of toxins that we're exposed to on a daily basis. They're everywhere. So sometimes you would go crazy, I think, trying to protect yourself from every single toxin.
Mm-hmm.
I do encourage people, like, try to sort out the toxins and take the least toxic route.
Right.
But also, we are living in a day and age where supplementation is highly important. Doing the things that promote health and knowing that even the things that have happened in the production of our food, knowing that sometimes we can't get every ingredient that we need through our food. So that is why these types of things like the patches or like supplements or like doing naturalistic type stuff, the goal, like Darlene pointed out earlier, is decreasing the inflammation or the toxicity and then increasing the things that help our bodies ward off this. It's like you said about the mold. We a lot of times can just, it can cycle through. Our bodies are very resilient, but at some point, and as we get older, our bodies aren't able to fight off these things as much. So it's highly important. And that's why I love bringing people with different types of things that can help. I love bringing you guys on the podcast because it's like you said, this is something that you wish you would have known years ago. Like, why are you gatekeeping this? I want to know about this stuff. And same with me. One thing that is really remarkable, the patches has even been shown to help with scoliosis. in the structuring of the bone and things. So there's so many of these patches, way more than we could get into in an hour worth of conversation.
There's an anesthesiologist. He's a 40-year physician, Dr. Joseph Peck, and he calls this the most significant medical breakthrough in my lifetime. And he says the X39 patch is the most amazing product in medicine. And there's another doctor who wrote this book called How to Reverse Aging: A Comprehensive Guide to Copper Peptides, Dr. John Harmon. You know, he had a right branch bundle blockage in his heart. He has a frustration with people who say, well, I'm not feeling anything that's not doing anything. Well, he didn't know he had a right branch bundle blockage. He never felt the patches doing their thing, but 14 months later, when he went and got scanned again, his right branch bundle blockage was gone. So had he not ever had the scan, he would not have known that the right branch bundle blockage was there and that it went away. You know, you talked about the fact that one of those things that is working so well for people, and the fact that there are no contraindications. I want to point out that there were over 300 Olympic athletes in the 2008 Olympics that wore LifeWave patches. Pros and Serena Williams, David Beckham, Michael Phelps, you know, Ivory Sully, who's a 5-time NFL Outstanding Special Teams Player of the Year, he was in a podcast in September and talked about that Tom Brady is wearing these patches. So that's why I was, you know, I guess Suzanne Summers, who, bless her heart, just passed away after battling cancer since she was a little girl. I mean, she has had cancer on and off through her whole life. She's written 26 books on health. 6 of those, she actually talks about how the patches, particularly glutathione, have helped her detox from cancer treatments or helped her holistically improve her immune system. Because when you think about it, we all have cancer cells in our body, right? It's whether our immune system can fight them off. And that's where people like me who have these immune deficiencies are so highly susceptible to cancer and other things. And so I have been taking, you know, food and health seriously for many, many years. I think my first diagnosis came in 1996, and I was like, wow, what do I need to do? And I also believe in supplementation. I also think, though, people need to think about whole food nutrition and whole food supplementation too. One of my favorite things is algae. There's a product called Energy Bits and Recovery Bits, which are just algae and spirulina and chlorophylla. And it is a very, very clean. I mean, there's 1,000 times more nutrients in algae than in any other plant. It's like eating just like a bathtub full of vegetables, and getting all of this great nutrition all the way down to the DNA of your mitochondria. So I love algae, and you know, for those of us who are doing everything we can try and do to try to fix all of the various issues in our body, that's when I just recently started. So I'm a big believer in nutrition. I'm just sort of learning about how many supplements aren't what we think they are. Like our vitamin C's isn't like the vitamin C out of an orange, right? It's a synthetically produced, maybe not thing that's important. You know, the orange is better. If we can get it from a whole food nutrition, then I think we do ourselves a better service, because many of our, what we think of as our natural supplements are actually also made by pharmaceutical companies, and I don't trust pharmaceutical companies.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because that is so true. That is true. And I've heard different studies of how even the pill, the little capsules, is not good. Sometimes, like if we're taking so many supplements, that the little capsules are not good. I interviewed a guest recently, and he has traveled the world to get like the very best supplements. If only there was one thing that covered everything, that would be
Right.
great. But it doesn't.
Right.
It is just like our bodies are holistic, and we have everything from brain health to heart health to,
Right.
you know, gut health to all the things. The goal is to increase the amount of good that we're doing to our body and decrease the amount of bad that we cannot avoid. We're being exposed to it from the moment we walk out the door, and probably even before, from the moment we put one thing in our mouth. We're being exposed to toxins. But I have looked in, I've read a lot about the patches, and hopefully by the time this episode airs, I'll have tried them and I can attach a little bit of my experience with them. I'm excited to try them. But Darlene, I know we're like over the hour, but I do want to ask you this: is there, if you had to leave like our guest with one big takeaway, what would that be as far as your experience, what you've been through, and then what you've seen in treating everything from the PTSD to your husband to just getting healthy in general? What's your big takeaway?
I think is to take charge of your health. I think that a lot of people in our country, particularly, we go to doctors and we expect them to treat us. Like, we expect them to know, we expect them to fix us. And when I think of taking charge of my health, I think of me as the driver in the car. I'm the person that has to figure it out. That means I do the research. That means I do I'm looking everywhere. I am listening to my Western medicine doctor. They do have value to provide, but I think that there are a lot of other types of doctors too. There are alternative and naturopathic and integrative and functional medicine doctors that have a whole different set of tools in their toolbox. And these things that are, not prescription and no contraindication that anybody can try, except if maybe you had an organ transplant because it boosts your immune system too much. But you know, if you need to take charge of your health and not and because your health is your greatest wealth. It doesn't really matter. Nothing else that you have in the world means anything if you aren't healthy enough to enjoy everything around you. And I view that this $99 investment, $99 for a 1 month supply of patches, even one patch for 24 hours resets 4,000 genes, resets to their healthier expression 4,000 genes. So, there are times when I'm like patching someone I'll never see again, but I got one patch on them and I reset their 4,000 genes and I did good for the world. But I think that people, don't just trust everything you're reading or hearing from your primary doctor. And you can't even necessarily it's not easy to go find all of this information. These podcasts are great because they do offer a voice for the alternative views. And there's a lot of wisdom to be gained out there from a lot of people. And don't give up and keep having hope.
So much wisdom that you have, Darlene, and I just appreciate you, spending this time with us and sharing your wisdom and your results and just everything with us. It's been such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Amber, and thank you for all that you do. I do want to say that if people want more information, I will do a consultation, and I actually will also pull in a doctor if someone wants to have a doctor answer their questions. For your audience, anybody that goes to the website, the IamReverseAging.com website, or even if you end up having a website, Amber, we'll make sure that your audience gets to have the consultations of which patches, what do they need. There are videos, there's science, there's patents, there's, a ton of information on the website, and just try. I mean, what do you have to lose? There's a money back guarantee. It's just nothing to lose, really.
Yeah. And we will link all of those things in the show notes so that you can find them quickly and easily. And if you can't get to the show notes, then by all means, you can reach out to me and I can put you in contact with Darlene and, just see if there's something there that can help you and help you thrive. Because like she said, that's the beauty of life, is being able to thrive and have a healthy mind and a healthy body. So
yeah. What else do you know that can give you a healthy mind and a healthy body and have no side effects? Be your own body, optimizing your own body the way your body knows. It has the innate wisdom to do it. So doctors are guessing at what's wrong in there, but your body knows what it needs to fix. And I love that it taps the power of your own body to fix and help heal your own body.
So good. All right, Darlene, thank you so much.
Thank you, Amber. You're a doll. I just love you to death. And thank you for all that you do.
Thank you for listening to Through the Trauma podcast. If you have found value in this episode or believe in the mission behind what we are doing, please subscribe so that you never miss any future episodes. Also, be sure to check out our transformation project at transformationthroughtraumaproject.com, where we help inspirational stories get heard on a larger scale through multiple platforms. If you know someone who can benefit from this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.